Hi everyone, this is Sam with Wine News in 5. Before I get to the news, I'd like to congratulate anyone in Stage 1 or Stage 2 of the Master of Wine program who received positive news today regarding their June exams. And if you didn't receive the news you wanted, rest assured you're not alone, and for many of us, this is a rather long journey. Luckily, the company is good. I deferred my exam this year, but I will see those of you who just passed Stage 1 or are resitting Stage 2 in June. In terms of global news, today I'll discuss Trump tariffs, a new development with US alcohol guidelines, yield forecasts for harvest in France and Italy, findings on how yeast strains fare amid high temperatures in vineyards, and how ketchup may be better business for grape growers than wine. First up, an update on Trump tariffs. After last week's announcement that the US Court of Appeals had ruled 7-4 that Donald Trump had overstepped his authority by imposing global tariffs, this week the US Supreme Court announced that they would hear the case. What's more, the oral arguments have been fast tracked and will be heard the first week of November. This means that there's a chance that the case will be ruled on by the end of this year. But if the case follows a normal timeline, the ruling could take until June 2026. The tariffs will stay in effect throughout the appeals process. Victor Owen Schwartz, the owner of wine importer VOS Selections, which was one of the 5 businesses who brought this case against the Trump administration, went on MSNBC this week to discuss the impacts of the tariffs on U.S. importers. He said that in the second quarter of this year, his business has seen a 60% reduction in profits, and his offerings have contracted 3 to 4%. He also pointed out that for every dollar of wine he's unable to import, there are $4 of GDP lost across U.S. shipping industries, retail operations, and restaurants. On to a new development with the dietary guidelines for Americans. A controversial report by the Interagency Coordinating Committee on the Prevention of Underage Drinking, the ICCPUD, which I reported on back in January, looks like it's been shelved alongside the defunding of the ICCPUD itself, announced on September 1st. Based on a published draft, the ICCPUD report was expected to promote a no safe level of alcohol consumption message, in contrast to a much more rigorously prepared report commissioned by Congress from the NASEM, the National Academies of Science, Engineering, and Medicine. Each report was intended to inform the updated dietary guidelines for Americans, the DGA, which include guidelines on alcohol consumption. Though I was not a fan of the ICCPUD report, and this development may ultimately make things easier for the alcohol industry, I'm not thrilled for 2 reasons. First, the primary objective of the ICCPUD wasn't to provide this report. It was to support states in preventing, reducing, and collecting data on underage drinking. Second, if the ICCPUD report had been released, it would have been compared and contrasted with the NASEM report. If the methodology of the ICCPUD report remained as flawed as it was in the draft, the NASEM report would have stood a greater chance of being respected in the court of public opinion. As it is, the New York Times, Vox, Stat News, and US News and World Report have all come out with articles saying the Trump administration has buried a report linking alcohol to cancer. Worse, many are claiming that it was buried because of the alcohol industry. We seem no closer to the revised DGA being released. Next, yield forecasts for harvest in France and Italy. France's Ministry of Agriculture released a report on September 1st forecasting that 37.4 million hectoliters of wine would be produced in 2025. This is a 3% increase over 2024, but is still 13% lower than the 5-year average. This represents a major reduction in forecasted yield from the beginning of August, due in large part to crop losses from drought and intense heat in the last month. Italy's Associazione ISMEA and the Unione Italiana Vini announced on September 10th that they expected Italy would produce 47.4 million hectoliters, an 8% increase over 2024 and in line with the 5-year average. This estimate would make Italy the largest wine producer in the world in 2025. On to findings on how yeast strains fare amid high temperatures in vineyards. On August 29th, Excel Laboratory in France released their findings on the microflora present on grapes and how it's been impacted by the severe heat waves in France in 2025. The study details how prior to veraison, the microflora in grapes consists mostly of a variety of molds. Once veraison begins, the microflora transitions to mostly non-Saccharomyces yeasts, one of which is Hanseníaspora uvarum, a yeast that is highly tolerant to the heat waves that are becoming more common with climate change. This yeast compromises the establishment of Saccharomyces cerevisiae, which is usually the dominant yeast in wine production, and generates more volatile acidity, which can lead to aromas of nail polish remover or vinegar. To combat this, Excel recommends inoculating with Saccharomyces cerevisiae and introducing oxygen to the grape must. But I'm curious if viticultural practices that lower overall vineyard temperature, such as not tilling, would help with this. I'd love to hear from anyone with data. Finally, ketchup pays better than wine for some grape growers. In Provence, the Coopérative Agricole Provence Languedoc, the CAPL, is paying grape growers more for grape concentrate for use in ketchup than they receive from wine producers. CAPL told the wine publication Vitisphere that they value the grape concentrate because it means they use less sugar in total, source more locally, and score higher with the nutritional labeling system Nutri-Score. The CAPL is paying around €100 per hectoliter for grape must versus an average of 35 to 60 hectoliters for our IGP grapes intended for wine, or 75 to €85 per hectoliter for grapes intended for Côte du Rhône. Honestly, if we can keep grape growers in business, I'm for it. Perhaps the US's oversupply could take the place of corn syrup in Heinz ketchup. That's all for this episode of the Wine News. If you enjoyed this newscast and you'd like to see it continue, please become a member of jancesrobinson.com. And if you have breaking news in your area, please email me at news@jancesrobinson.com. Thanks.